Welcome back once again to the Chelsea Roar, the Chelsea podcast by the fans, for the fans. I am your host, Ian Kelly, as always, and today I am very, very happy, man, because I've been trying to get this man on for a couple of weeks now. This is the first True Blue member that is actually part of the Chelsea Supporters Trust and a regular on the fantastic podcast, the Chelsea FanCast. Your friend and mine, Mark Meehan. Mark, welcome to the show, my friend, and thank you very much for taking the time out to come on.
No, thank you very much for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be on the Chelsea Roar, talking all things Chelsea this afternoon. Where shall I start, Ian? Bit of history about me? Yeah.
Absolutely, my brother. Absolutely.
Yeah. Being a Chelsea fan since 1970 Cup final. I started following Chelsea the third round of the FA Cup that season. Very much, I've told the story before on the Chelsea FanCast. My father, when he was alive, knew someone that bound the Chelsea programme in a firm based in Queen's Park in London called King and Jarrett. And obviously the programme would be bound on a Friday night, ready to be sold at Stamford Bridge on a Saturday. And he brought those small sort of like 5p programmes home on a Friday night for the Chelsea-Burnley FA Cup tie from 1970. So I pretty much was hooked from there. And lo and behold, in my first season following Chelsea, they win the FA Cup. So not a bad start. My first game was against Coventry City in April 1971. Probably my heroes at that time, early heroes would have been Peter Osgood and Ian Hutchinson. And the first game I get to, they were both injured that day. So the forward line for that day, so it's stood me in good stead down the years. Is a good quiz question. Was a gentleman called Peter Feely, who Chelsea at the time had signed from non-league Enfield, and South African striker that played a lot that season, covering for Osgood when he was suspended, and Ian Hutchinson, who sadly got injured on many an occasion, a guy called Derek Smethurst. So Chelsea won 2-1. So I've been following Chelsea for nigh on 50 years. First season ticket I bought, engaging with colleagues on Twitter the other day, 1978-79 season. Bought my first season ticket for £25, and Chelsea got relegated my first season. So yeah, so I've seen Chelsea relegated 3 times in my lifetime. So I know the bad, so I can appreciate the good. And we've really had very good, not just the last 19 years under Roman Abramovich. I think the pre-Abramovich years as well.
The 90s,
since we won the FA Cup in the late 90s, that whole period with Glenn Hoddle coming in, you had the Hoddle baton pass to Hullet to Vialli period where it just changed Chelsea forever, in my view, and probably put them in a position that Abramovich could come in and buy the club 19 years ago.
I've got number 9. I've got number 9 Vialli on this bad boy here. So
oh, I like that. I've got from that era. I've got 2 shirts from that era. I've got a Gianfranco Zola shirt with Zola's 25 on the back.
Auto glass.
Yeah. And Roberto Di Matteo number 16 shirt. So it's a great shirt. I do like the 1997 shirt. I do like it a lot. So a good shirt that. In terms of also as a fan, I used to edit the Chelsea Independent fanzine in the mid 90s. So ironically, up and including that season for the shirt you've got on, Ian, which the Chelsea Independent was the forerunner for the CFC UK fanzine that is still sold today and going strong. On the back of that, I got a gig with the club. Well, I used to write for the club official magazine, the Chelsea magazine, until Ken Bates, bless him, barred me.
There's a surprise.
I think I described, because they asked me to do a review on all the kits Chelsea had down the years, and I can't remember. I think it was the infamous Chelsea collection from the 1980s, where I think I said the Chelsea collection was the football kits, what King Herod was the babysitting. I don't think Ken quite liked that somehow. But the interesting thing was the people that were running the magazine, it wasn't in-house, it was outsourced at that time. The same people, if you remember as a kid, they used to do Shoot magazine.
Sure.
A lovely guy who edited Shoot called Peter Stewart. He then went on to do the West Ham programme. I don't know if he still is to this day, probably isn't. And they liked what I wrote, so they just said, carry on writing, Mark, just write under a nom de plume. So it just became a standing joke every week. or every issue, I just think of another name each time. And there came a moment where I was out in, where was it? Oh, Verona. We were playing Vicenza in the 1998 Cup Winners' Cup semi-final first leg. Yeah.
And Brassetti actually scored against us in that, and then we bought him.
And we bought Brassetti, yeah. And I was having lunch in a square in Verona, which probably has like their equivalent of the Colosseum, a very smaller version of it. And Ken Bates and his partner Susanna came by and stopped for lunch, and we were chatting away. And Ken basically said to me, "Oh, why did you stop writing for the Chelsea magazine, Mark?" Yeah. And I said, "Ken, you barred me." He goes, "Oh yes, one of my better decisions. But you've sneaked back in, haven't you?" Yeah. And I go, "I have no idea what you are talking about." So yeah, he still knew, but again, because it wasn't in my actual name, and I was still doing the fanzine at that time, and we had a few fallout with Ken. You know, it was under the radar. He sort of thought nothing of it. And then after that, having sort of like started my writing career at Chelsea, doing the fanzine, got involved in a number of things. I produced and edited a book. Was the first 10 years of the Chelsea Independent fanzine. It's called From Save the Bridge to Wembley. Yeah, you can find it, or if people want to contact me, you know, for the small price of a postage anywhere in the world, I'd even happily send it to them for free. They just need to pay the postage. So that's online also at Amazon. I then, if you've listened to the FanCast,
I'll put the links in the description here as well. I'm plugging on the Twitter as well, and I'll obviously buy a book off you too. So
if you've listened to the FanCast regularly with sort of Stamford Chidge and the lovely man that is Jonathan Kidd, who's obviously the famous English actor Sam Kidd's son, it's become a bit of a standing joke on the Chelsea FanCast, because even though I've known them for a number of years, they had no idea that I'd written this book. So I did this book on precisely the era we've just been talking about, that Hullet, Vialli era, and it literally finishes with Vialli as manager. It's called Blue Tomorrow, and that's available on Amazon. I think it's available in a publishing house called Empire Books in Manchester. And then obviously more recently, and this was a real labour of love for me, because this was my team. One of my favourite teams was sort of like the 1976-77 promotion team, when Eddie McCready, our former player, was manager. It was just an amazing season. Like, you're a teenager going to football and all the excitement and danger sometimes that can bring. So we spent a number of years with a number of the guys who either involved with the Chelsea FanCast or CFC UK fanzine. And my task was to track down all the players from that era, which was absolutely fantastic to do. And pretty much, bar one or two, just never succeed in getting over the line. I got the whole sort of like squad together. And then what we decided to do when we launched the book 5 years ago, we launched it at Under the Bridge, which is a nightclub under Stamford Bridge. Yeah. And after many sort of like hit and misses, one of the guy who edits the CFC UK fanzine, affectionately known as Mr. Only a Pound, Mr. Dave Johnson, he managed to persuade Eddie McCready to come over for the do, which was the first time since he got his contract ended, by Chelsea. He'd never been back to England since, so 40 years out in the wilderness. So he came home, sell out on the night, a very, very, very emotional evening. So I think just absolute pleasure to do that book, reminiscing that squad, interviewed the whole squad. Eddie tells his story in the book, and it's a bit of a tome, it's a bit of a thick book, but again, Eddie Mac, quite big book. You'll find that either on Amazon, or if people listening haven't yet discovered the delights of a gentleman called Mark Worrell, they might be following me on Twitter. Mark Worrell, Mark and I got to know each other down the years. Mark's got his own Chelsea publishing house. He's probably published about 20 books now, as you've done your intro, by the fans, for the fans. Yeah. So it's basically just published books written by Chelsea fans through Gate 17 Books. So if no one's not yet discovered Gate 17 Books, there are just so many. I've been lucky to be involved with a few of them. There's so many amazing books on there. And it really then culminated just a few weeks ago, because one of the things I also organised since I've joined the trust a couple of years ago is the annual Sleep Out at Stamford Bridge. Yes. Where we as fans sleep out, raise money for a wonderful charity, which is the Oswald Stoll Foundation, known as Stoll Veterans, which has been next door to Stamford Bridge, since the end of the First World War. Yeah. Oswald Stoll was a theatre impresario, who decided to buy that land and build what you'd probably call homes fit for heroes. You know, people who'd been injured in the First Great War came back home, and it's been there as long as Chelsea have been at Stamford Bridge. So we think dearly. We think a lot of Oswald Stoll, people who've sort of like served in the military, both men and women, you know, had, you know, in many occasions post-traumatic stress disorder, suffered homelessness.
Sure.
So the least we can do once a year as fans, you know, we get together. Club are very supportive of this, and at the current level, I think we've raised about £22,000 from the sleep out last month, but £50,000 in the last 3 years. And on the back of that, Mark spoke to me a couple of months ago and said, how about us, you know, giving up our time and doing a book for charity? And Mark just tweeted about it about an hour ago. So we did a book called Tales from the Shed, and it's an amazing book, I have to say. I'm proud to be involved with it. There's 30 of us. If people have seen the film or read the books by John King, The Football Factory, you know, John King, when I was doing the Chelsea Independent fanzine, John used to write for me, but he's gone on to be such a successful author. John's in there, a guy called Martin Knight, who was involved in a book called Hooli Fan, loads and loads of other sort of Chelsea authors, and it's just, you know, a really incredible book.
Can you put that one up a bit closer there for it? Yeah, that's beautiful cover as well. Beautiful cover.
Tales of the Shed, and the guy who drew that cover, and it just seemed appropriate because obviously it's Ray Wilkins in front of the shed.
Sure.
There's a guy called Richard Shaler, just absolutely amazing talent as an artist. And we just came across Richard. If people like The Jam, Rick Buckler, who's the drummer with The Jam, did a book a few years ago that Richard did cartoons to accompany it, and then he turns out to be a Chelsea fan. And like the back cover is obviously then that infamous goal Peter Osgood scores against Manchester United in the 1970s, and it just seems so appropriate to have Ray on the cover, because Ray's the inspiration for the Chelsea Sleep Out. Because if people listen to Talk Sport, they would have heard the story when Ray sadly passed away of this former veteran who talks about Ray at West Brompton Tube Station sitting down, you know, giving him £20 for a cup of tea and somewhere to stay for the night. And we just thought, if one of our greatest ever players can do that, why can't we just do something similar to Chelsea fans? So that's hence the origins of the Sleep Out. So yeah, number of books there. We are always working on ideas and projects and open to suggestions for books. We'll probably do it again next year because we'll do the Sleep Out as an annual event. I would hope that whoever comes in as the new administrator of Chelsea, which I'm sure they will, they'll be supporters of this. We have to wait and see. Obviously,
I might have to get my thinking cap on as well now for this these kind of books as well. To be fair, I'm really enjoying that. Yeah,
but it's what Mark Wall has done is quite remarkable. You know, he's just, you know, taken the time and trouble to sort of learn how to sort of like publish books, put it all together, the typeset, everything. And he did it first to publish his own book. So he was a self-publisher doing his own Chelsea story. Yeah. But it's just grown from there. And there's just, you know, sometimes it's people's personal stories, sometimes it's an event. So one book, and I was lucky to contribute to it. When Chelsea got promoted from the second division, and I talked about that relegation, it took 5 years to come back. In 1983-84, the first game of the season, we played at Highbury, and there's so many photos been posted, you know, from the Chelsea away end that day. There must have been 15,000 Chelsea fans in there. You know, don't anyone ever let you say like, oh, Chelsea fans only started supporting them in 2003. It's utter nonsense. You know? Absolute nonsense. But it's an amazing picture. And a book grew out of that one game. So it's a book just about one game, and that Arsenal game. And there's an amazing goal that Kerry Dixon scores, our first goal back in the first division. And the guys that put the book together just contacted, like we've done from Tales from the Shed, 9 or 10 Chelsea fans, and just a different lens, a different perspective. You know, how was it you on that particular day? What do you remember? And one of the amazing things they did is they tracked down the original mascot for that game in 1984. He was a Chelsea fan. Sure. And you can imagine sort of like 30 odd years later, he's a bit bigger. He looks a bit different. He's got a few more tattoos than he might have had when he was eight, and a bit like that when he was 8 years of age. So yeah, Gate 17, absolutely delighted. Mark Waller's like a dear friend of mine, absolutely lovely guy, massive Chelsea fan, and always working on ideas. We're probably working on another one at the moment, and just say anyone listen to Chelsea Raw, you know, they'll be posted up there. But keep, you know, if you're not yet following Mark Waller, I would urge you to do so and follow Gate 17 book. There's some great Chelsea books out there.
Absolutely, and like I love hearing these type of stories. You know what I mean? For me, obviously growing up in Ireland, not being able to get to the games as a kid and stuff like that, you know, it's such a look. I suppose any fan of any club is going to tell you the same story, but there is something special about our club. And even though, you know, it was like I almost knew what the bridge looked like before I went there because I watched it that much. You know what I mean? I remember literally coming home from school in the 1998 in the knockout, it was the quarterfinals against Barcelona. Gianfranco Zola, Tor Andre Flo scoring the goals against Barcelona. I remember just going, please just teleport me to that stadium right now. You know what I mean? I need to be there. So it's really cool having someone like you on who has literally seen the evolution from the cup final in the 70s all the way to now, and kind of really kind of see who the proper Chelsea are, as we say, because you know, unfortunately, we do have a bit of a problem now with social media and Twitter and stuff like that, where there's a kind of a fickle side of the fan base and the divided fan base, and it's kind of like Twitter really doesn't tell the true story of who and what makes Chelsea, you know, tick, I suppose. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
I think there's good and lots of bad on
Yes.
social media. I
Yes.
include Twitter in it. I'm on Twitter, and I think what I would say is there's lots of good people on Twitter, yeah, and I follow lots of good people, and I don't bother, or I just block what I'd probably refer to as the idiots, you know.
Yes. Yes.
But my philosophy about being on Twitter is usually if people follow me, I only tweet about 3 or 4 things: Chelsea, football, beer, and rock and roll. That's probably about it, you know.
All right.
And
Okay.
yeah,
So you got me at the rock and roll stage, right? Before we
yeah,
get into more Chelsea, give me your rock and roll. Give me your rock, because I'm a people that know me know I was in many heavy metal bands as a trying to be a singer, I suppose.
Oh, fantastic! Well, yeah, we're on the same path then. I think you know, probably if you said to me who's the best band ever, I'd have to say, and not just because I'm Irish, it's Thin Lizzy. You know, for me, best band going, best live band I've ever seen. Favorite bands? I've got so many. I love Iron Maiden. I love The
you
Who.
just mentioned my favorite band of all time.
Yeah.
So we've done a trade here, because you just said you're an Irishman as well, obviously English Irishman.
Yeah.
And I have now, you know, raised you. I've taken your British band, the best metal band of all time, in my opinion, Iron Maiden. So
yeah. Oh no, so for me, Iron Maiden was what I got into them very much when they started in sort of like the late 1970s, when they had Paul the the Marquee, even before they grew. So before the first album, I used to see them regularly at the Marquee in London. I've seen them at the Ruskin Arms. So the very early days. And for me, going to Maiden was like going to football. The crowds were just like football crowds. It was just incredible. And that whole new wave of British heavy metal, I was sort of there at the start. So like bands like Saxon, Def Leppard, you know, Judas Priest, like Motorhead, like Saxon. Saxon's almost like a ritual now. There's a load of guys who I go to with Chelsea. They're the same guys I've been going with sort of like since I was young. You know, I always say I don't have any. This is not me being sad. I don't have any friends, you know, anymore from who I went to school with. All my friends who I've grown up with after all these years are from Chelsea. I've kept the same friends through Chelsea Football Club. We go to gigs together. Saxon is like an annual outing. We went to see Saxon a few weeks ago at Hammersmith Odeon. They had Uriah Heep and Girls' School on the bill, and Diamond Head. Diamond Head, another great band.
Fantastic band.
But I'm also a bit of a punk rocker. I like me jam, I like me new wave. I like the Members, the Skids, the Clash. The Undertones. Yeah.
Shout out to my dad. That's my dad's favorite band, actually. And Joe Strummer, a Chelsea man as well.
Joe Strummer, Chelsea man. Massive fan of the Tom Robinson band. So every now and again, like we have our Chelsea FanCast outings where a few of us might go to gigs as well. So the other week, few lads from Chelsea, Mark Warren as well. We saw the Godfathers last Friday week at the 100 Club in London. Yeah. Mark, Chidge and I went to see Tom Robinson back end of last year. I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks' time as well, which would have been interesting had we gone to the Champions League final. It would have clashed with the Champions League final in Paris. So Sorry, Tom. I think I would have been Paris rather than seeing you in London. But big fan of Tom Robinson's. Yeah, but yeah, that's sort of like my music. Also, we probably haven't got time for it. Yeah, mentioning Saxon. There was a period in the '90s where you saw probably what you call thrash metal. So like grew out of Metallica. There was a British scene. One of the bands at the forefront of the British thrash metal scene. Got to know them through a magazine called Raw Magazine. Knew their manager, knew a guy. Yeah, knew a guy called Phil Alexander that now edits Mojo. So you knew Phil well, even though he's an Arsenal fan. So Phil and I used to have a beer on a Friday night, and like a UK band from Bradford got to work with them. So I was lucky enough in the early '90s to do 3 weeks on tour with them, filming them, sort of like being sort of like the road crew, sort of like traveling around Europe. And it was a 3-band bill. Saxon were headlining. Seattle bands called Metal Church were second on the bill, and this UK band called Toranaga were third on the bill.
Nice.
And then Saxon went off elsewhere in the world, and Metal Church and Toranaga continued around Holland and Europe. Just great time. So yeah, massive music fan, massive metal fan, and I think probably the other bands I haven't mentioned, just bringing the Irish theme back. Massive fan of Therapy, Andy Cairns, big Chelsea fan. And Ricky Warwick. Love the Almighty, love Black Star Riders, because again, it's continuing the legacy of Thin Lizzy. So that's a bit about me and my music taste as well.
I love it. I've actually I was only on Saturday night. I was actually I don't know whether you're familiar with the band Pantera.
Yep, remember them well. Saw them a few times. Yeah,
I'm actually quite good friends now with the singer Phil Anselmo, and
right.
he's been on my other podcast a couple of times, and I told him we done a trade a long time ago where I would become a New Orleans Saints fan, which you can see I'm rocking the hat, and he would be a Chelsea fan. So he's even though he might not know much about Chelsea, Phil Anselmo's a Chelsea fan. I've told him that he's a Chelsea fan. So
they were a good band, Pantera, really good band. Yeah. I know a couple of the band are no longer around these days, but I saw them a couple of times in the UK. I think they were supporting Megadeth, and I think they might have supported Judas Priest from memory. Yeah,
they would have been good friends with Priest boys, but good Lord, man, they were a vicious band. Vicious.
Yeah. They made Metallica seem light. So like,
do you know what I mean? It was like they were like Metallica were Bud Light once Pantera came on the scene. Why don't we get to some kind of modern times, I suppose, and we'll talk about. Let's start with, I suppose, we'll talk about the ownership and stuff maybe at the end.
Okay.
The best place to start would be the current situation with what we're seeing on the pitch. Obviously, we are recording this here on a bank holiday Monday. There's the hangover from that result, and then there's the hangover from me going out. So if I look groggy-eyed, guys, I'm sorry. Chelsea did it to me. So, I mean, when you look at the last kind of few games and you look at the trajectory of kind of where we're going here, once again, we're talking about divided fan bases and stuff, and who to blame, I suppose the Arsenal one is the best place to start, because obviously we went over to the Bernabeu, and we did essentially give Real Madrid a bit of a hiding until we didn't, so to speak. What do you think the downfall has been since that game? The mentality in this squad, I think, is a bit of an issue here, and like we say, a podcast by the fans for the fans. We're two fans talking here. We're not trying to just monetize the Chelsea situation to look good on YouTube. We're literally trying to talk about it as fans. There's a lot of conversations about certain players, Mark, and whether they are, we're into 4 managers now that certain players have let down. What do you think?
It's a strange one, really, because if you go back to the Madrid game, for the large part of that game, that's the best we've played, not just this season, probably for men. It was just an absolute magnificent performance. So that's the high. So And that group of players produces that kind of performance against one of the best teams in Europe. And then within a matter of weeks, you just sort of think, these are the same players pretty much. You know, what's gone wrong? You know, it's just really strange. Is it that it's been a really, really long season, perhaps, and they're just now just running out of steam? Yeah, part of me thinks, you know, Europe's there, we're fine, we'll qualify the Champions League. Yeah, we might creep over the line, but we'll get there. And the fact that Tottenham have got to play Arsenal helps us enormously. And the fact we've
Yes.
got the likes of, you know, Watford and Leicester to come at home, which I do think, and Wolves, I think we're quite capable of beating all three of those, even though we're going through a sticky patch at the moment. So I don't know whether it's just like a level of exhaustion, you know, for what A is a long season, or B, they put so much in to that Madrid game, and you could just see at the end of it just how physically and emotionally they were drained. And that's a hard thing to come back from. Very hard thing to come back from. So yeah, there's perhaps a bit of that. They spent all of their energy. They gave everything they could, you know, in that one game, trying to actually, you know, turn the game round. And the Arsenal game, it was just bizarre. That's not a good Arsenal team, I thought. They scored 4 goals against us. It just
The
did not make
bridge.
any kind yeah, at the bridge. It did not make any kind of sense. It was 2 really bad defences. And Arsenal's forwards were more sharper than ours. But yeah, I thought both defences were poor. But it just did not make any kind of sense. But you put it down to maybe, you know, a jet lag hangover. They're tired from the Madrid game. But the result since then, it hasn't, you know, hasn't been great. I know we beat West Ham, you know, and to be fair, you know, West Ham sort of pretty much parked the bus, and we played a lot of decent football against West Ham. But what seems to be our Achilles heel at the moment is it doesn't matter how much possession we've got, how good the football is, we just can't put the ball in the net. Our strikers have just gone south. Yeah, and it don't matter who plays up front. It's very, very similar. You know, no one. So like someone like Werner, who I've really sort of like backed and persevered and tolerated
Me
with,
too. Yeah. Yeah.
and saw that purple patch of form he had at Southampton and Madrid, and even Arsenal for a while, beginning to turn that corner. And lately, again, it's almost like pre-Madrid Werner. It just doesn't make any kind of sense. So, and I don't think certain players, perhaps with their contracts, you know, coming to an end, probably helps. Rudiger is going now. I think Christensen's gone, and we still don't know what's happened with Aspilicueta. And now there's rumours about Alonso potentially, you know, going as well. If that happens, that's a whole defence. You know, something fundamentally goes wrong when you lose your whole defence in one season at the end of a transfer window. So whether or not that is having an impact that players' eyes are, you know, somewhere else, shall we say? There's only a handful of games to go, and they don't want to do anything stupid like breaking a leg so their transfer doesn't come off. It just doesn't make any kind of sense.
That's a
But
good point.
the
That's a
trouble
good point, actually, that you made there. That's actually a
yeah,
really good point that I haven't heard people kind of tweeting about. Like Christensen, obviously he got his period before the previous game, you know, and he had a little upset stomach, you know, 10 minutes before the team sheet. So look, as far as I'm concerned, I think the Christensen situation, I'm just going to give it from my perspective. You may agree or you may disagree. I think it's a very Courtois type of situation. I think he was being a bit of a rat, being honest, getting a new agent and then all of a sudden reneging on the original deal. I don't think that lends any kind of support from the Chelsea fans, and you can understand that. You know what I mean? It's not like he's been, say, a Rudiger or a Silva in terms of his performance. He's always been up and down. He's never really been consistently amazing. He's had some amazing performances, Champions League and stuff like that, and we all thank him for that. But you know, it's a bit of a different situation, say, to Rudiger and Azpilicueta. Rudiger, I said it on my last show. You may agree or disagree as well. I think he played the perfect PR game. I think his head was always out of Chelsea. I don't believe he ever wanted to renew that contract, especially knowing now that, you know, billionaires are going to buy the club and could potentially keep him here and give him the money he wants. I think his head was always out the door, and I think his performance yesterday showed that. I think he was. I think he didn't. It was the first time I seen Rudiger under Tuchel not really giving a shit yesterday. Personally, you know, kicking the ball out for Richarlison, pretending to be injured, and Marcus Alonso actually calling him out on it. I was like, well done, Marcus. You know what I mean? It's a very strange kind of situation that we're in. As you mentioned, some
It
players,
is.
it's so strange. Go ahead.
But it would be absolutely typical Chelsea, the unpredictable nature that is Chelsea, that we've gone through this poor period of several weeks, and then we bounce back by beating Liverpool to win the FA Cup. It's so Chelsea for us to do that. And I think the Rudiger thing. Yeah, I would agree. I think Rudiger gave the perfect job audition against Real Madrid.
Yeah,
I thought he was magnificent. I thought, come and get me. I've always taken the viewpoint, footballers are footballers. They might kiss the badge, but at the end of the day, it's a short career. And if someone dangles a sort of an incentive, a lot of players will just jump. So I've never, got too emotionally involved in more recent times with players, because I always sort of thought there's two constants at Chelsea Football Club, and the two constants are Stamford Bridge and the fans. They don't change, and everybody else is just passing through. And where modern football is, I don't think you're ever going to be in that situation ever again. I'll be delighted if it happens, but I don't think it will. Where you're going to get that player from like the cradle to the grave, from the junior team, staying their whole club career with Chelsea, or even staying at Chelsea long enough to say what you probably call in the old days a testimonial. I don't think it's been a while since anyone had one of those. But I think players will come and go. There'll be churn in the Premier League. I think the only thing that probably disappointed me about Rudiger, he's not a bad player in terms of his wages at the moment. He's not poorly paid. No. He's not one of the worst players. And that's where, to be said, I'll cut Christensen a little bit of slack. I'd agree. He is inconsistent. He's had some great games. He's had some really poor ones. He got torn apart, in some of the Champions League games in previous seasons. But he's not one of the best paid players at the club. Yeah. So I could probably understand if he is going to go to Barcelona, he's probably going to get a decent pay rise.
Sure.
But Rudiger is one of the better paid players at the club. So,
he's at 90 grand as far as I know.
How much more money? How much more money do they need? Do they want at the end of the day? And his ask, we're never going to get met. And I know people will say, well, that's just negotiation, and you ask for, and then you negotiate down. But he's a very well paid player. Yeah. No player is bigger than the club. I think he's been magnificent, since Tuchel came for us. I think he has. But if you don't want to play for Chelsea Football Club, thank you very much for your service. It's been a blast. But good luck in your future career. And even to be fair about Courtois, I know people call him snake and all that. I think, like most professional footballers, they're a lot of the time they're just badly advised. They've got people working for them whose business is making money out of their client. So most agents, are always looking over their shoulder what the next move is, unless they are the big enough player, the absolutely massive type player who don't need the move and will get the biggest sponsorships going. Because you look at your Ronaldo's, your Messi, some of the biggest players in the world. Otherwise, very few agents will be saying, well, you stay at this club for the next 10 years, blah, 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 blah. They're always looking, is there's a move in the offing, where can I move my client to? And, they didn't come up through the youth team. Rudiger did. That's why a bit more Christensen, not quite a youth player, but he did spend time coming through sort of like the under 21.
Came over when he was 16, didn't he? 16.
Exactly, yeah. So he didn't join as a schoolboy, so he's not like sort of like the likes of Mason Mount, Conor Gallagher, Tammy Abraham, Reece James, who came to the club when they were 8 years of age. And now 14, 15 years on, they were able to make their debut in the first.
By the way, I do take exception with one comment you made. I do believe that Reece James will stay with Chelsea his whole career. I think he's that type of.
I'd like to think he would.
He could be the one. He could be that one.
Yeah. And again, it really depends. I think his dad advises him, so that's probably a good thing. Yeah,
he's Chelsea as well, so yeah.
Yeah, so if he sticks with his dad providing advice, that's not a bad thing. I think the same with Mason Mount. I think Mason Mount is advised by his dad. That's positive. That's potential for the future. But too many players. It's a short career. They could get injured. They could break a leg. So the days of someone staying here for 10 years, as much as I'd like to see it happen, might still be few and far between. But Rudiger, thanks for your service. Christensen, thanks for your service.
We move on.
They move on. Part of me, I'd love to see Alonso stay, but I could understand if he moves on. I love Marcus Alonso.
Me too.
I really do.
Me too.
Really love Marcus Alonso. And
he comes under a lot of, and I've heard it in the stadium at the Brentford game even, like he comes under a lot of, from previous stuff that, and he gets a tremendous amount of abuse, obviously for, something that happened in the past. And I was watching him on the pitch, and I'm sure you watched him on the pitch. He literally, he's got a mentality like that's ironclad. He puts a suit of armor on.
Yeah.
And wow, what a player.
And I've always said he's no good in the back four. That's not his game.
No.
No. But you put him in a 3 or a 5, whether whichever way you want to call it, whether it's sort of like 3-5-2, 3-4-3, where he's playing that left wing back role, and he's magnificent. He's one of our best attacking forces at the moment, and obviously he got the goal at Old Trafford the other night when our strikers were misfiring. But he gets a lot of stick and a lot of abuse, and I don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's it's like other players sometimes where they played out of position. Some players get stick. Oh, he was poor today. Well,
same with Christian Pulisic is a good example. I mean, like, for most
doing a job for the team,
playing right wing back. I mean, like, the guy's not a wing back; he's a left winger. You know.
Yeah, but they do a job. Like, Loftus-Cheek. He's come back at the side more of late. I thought he was our best player yesterday. I thought he had a good game. He's played in different roles. Yeah, and he's doing a job for the team. And I just think, look, I know everyone can go to a game and then you go back to the pub afterwards and you have a bit of a moan. But I've always had that viewpoint. After about an hour, the game's forgotten about, because I've often said, like, a day at the football, if you talk that, I said Simon, I've seen us relegated 3 times. A day at the football used to be a great day out, sport by 90 minutes of football. So you soon forget the defeats and you move on. So there's no point sort of dwelling on it and blending on. I know enough people that it spoils their weekend. There's no point. Life's too short.
Yeah, one, I suppose, before we move on, there's two players in particular that I want to talk about. One I don't get, and I just really do not get, is the absolute hate that Mason Mount gets sometimes from some of our fan base when he's our literally top performer at the moment. It's like, I don't get it. Like, I mean, if we term proper Chelsea, I mean, like, that's Mason Mount, right? You know what I mean? He really is. And you hear some people like really ripping in on Mason Mount on in our fan base, and I'm like, I just don't get it. I don't get it.
I agree 100%. I don't get it either. Sometimes that is, as we talked about earlier, the menace that is social media.
Yeah.
And you do wonder sometimes whether people are just doing it for clicks and followers, etc.
I think so.
Or just to be edgy,
No, I did. You probably saw my Twitter yesterday, and I said, look, the fan base, we need to talk about Azpilicueta. That's the other player I was going to talk about. I believe, and I'm not going to say anything bad about Azpilicueta. Listen, I respect that man, as much as any player that's ever put the blue shirt on. However, I do believe that he's actually playing within his own head at the moment. And I've asked this question: is he actually a captain? I don't believe so. I think he's a leader within a dressing room, but I don't think you're talking Azpilicueta at the level of like a John Terry or, a Dennis Wise or someone that people will actually go. Because think about it. I mean, how does he go into the dressing room at halftime and go, right, lads, book up, and then tell the defenders what they're doing wrong and be like, you just gave the goal away. Well, what are you talking about? And you've done it now recently a lot of times. I have seen a little bit of a decline in Azpilicueta for maybe a season or two, personally. And look, like I say, this is not a hatchet job on Azpilicueta. I love the man, absolutely love the guy. I just, leadership starts with the captain, and I don't care what people say. Oh, captain isn't a captain anymore the way it used to be. Bullshit. I call bullshit on that. You know what I mean? I grew up watching the likes of Dennis Wise and Roy Keane. Roy Keane even said it as well. He's like, that's not, your captain is your guy that people don't argue back at. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm out of order here. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, not at all. I don't think out of order. I think we don't have that type of person at the club at this present moment in time. We don't have that John Terry, Dennis Wise type.
Do you not think Thiago Silva would be a better captain?
I see very sort of similarities in him. I don't see him as someone that will go sort of barking in the dressing room either. If it had been anyone, it probably would have been. If it had been anyone, it probably would have been Rudiger. Yeah, I could see Rudiger calling people out, but I think Azpilicueta has served the club really well.
Oh, 100%.
I think, and I think it's difficult for him because obviously it's a bit like what I'm saying about Loftus-Cheek. He's probably doing a job now because with injury squads, not having sort of like all the right people in the right places, we probably might have rested him a bit more than we have. He's played a hell of a lot of football.
Oh, yeah.
And this might potentially be his last season, or if he stays on for one more season, it'll always be like a club captain rather than a team captain, a bit like Gary Cahill was probably in his last year at Chelsea, a great captain, a great leader, but he didn't play much football. Same with Ivanovic. I thought Ivanovic was real captain material, and he did captain us a few times. But I think Ivanovic's last year, he'd lost a little bit of, not the quickest players, but a very intelligent reader game.
It's the same. It's a similar
yard
trajectory.
slower.
Yeah.
And I think it was just unfortunate yesterday because there's an unfortunate statistic. I think it was printed at the weekend. I think I read it somewhere that he'd never made a mistake in the Premier League that cost Chelsea a goal up until yesterday. That was the first mistake actually down to him.
Wow.
And I thought that was an amazing statistic. And then lo and behold, it happens yesterday. But yesterday was just sort of like one of those results that you could just see it coming. So I'm not going to blame Azpilicueta. It was just an all-round bad team performance where very few people sort of like stood out. Everton were up for it. They've been up for it for most of their home games this year, and very much inspired by a very noisy Goodison crowd. And probably
Sky Sports, by the way, with a fantastic, media job on calling it down the middle.
Yeah, and probably practicing a few dark arts that Frank learned from Jose Mourinho when he played under him. Yeah.
Frank did come out and apologise to the Chelsea fans for his celebration after.
I've got no issue with that. At the end of the day,
okay.
It's okay. You have these things about former players, not celebrating against their former club. Why? I don't. You don't play for us anymore. If you want to celebrate scoring a goal, celebrate scoring a goal. Just don't do it in front of those fans you used to play for. Do it in front of the away fans. That's fine. Yeah.
He's saving a team from relegation. You know what I mean? Yeah. At the end of the day, and look, let's be real. I gave Everton a lot of abuse on Twitter just purely for their antics. The Everton fans, should I say, for their antics at 3 a.m. with fireworks and stuff like that. So I got a bit of a bite back from some Everton fans as well, saying the gall of you as a Chelsea fan to call us, such and such. But at the end of the day, like, it's a battle now between Leeds and Everton. And it's kind of like, who do we want to go down? Dirty Leeds or Everton? I don't know. But if Super Frank is managing Everton, he's well within his rights to celebrate, a victory over his former team or any other team. So,
I think yesterday was just frustrating because after that remarkable win by Burnley on Saturday against Watford, had Everton lost yesterday, they would be in the mire. They'd be in serious trouble. And who do you want to play when you need 3 points badly in the current climate?
Charity FC.
Yeah, absolutely. We rock up. It just does. I think it's just fortunate that probably Wolves, Leicester, and Watford over the coming weeks don't have a lot to play for. Leeds will have. So you can see when we play Leeds Thursday week, Ellen Road will be exactly like Goodison was yesterday. Leeds will be very up for it because obviously there's that 50 years of hatred between the two teams as well. Everything that goes with that.
Yeah. No, 100%. Well, look, we'll move on. We'll spend the next kind of few minutes talking about obviously the club situation in terms of our new owners. Obviously on Friday, as everyone knows now, Rain Bank had recommended the Todd Bowley Group as the preferred bidder, and Sir Ratcliffe comes in and offers basically 4.25 billion, I believe it was. Is that correct?
Yeah, 4.25.
Yeah, and people kind of went, whoa. Now, this is going to be a good discussion because obviously you are a part of the Chelsea Supporters Trust, so you've actually met with all of the bidders, and you know the story. And obviously, Mark, I understand that there's a lot of things you can't say, so I'm not going to be that media guy to go, oh, well, give me all the shit. Basically, the due process that has kind of gone on between then and now and where we're at has led us to the Bowley Group being the preferred bidder. And obviously Paul Canaville and Supporters Trust of All basically said, yeah, we believe that this guy was the right guy from day one. But Ratcliffe has come out and basically told us what we want to hear as well. Look, I'm not in it for profit. I'm here for, to basically another Roman Abramovich, right? I just want to get your thoughts on both now, because obviously we're down to what we assumed was the new owner of Chelsea. And then as Chelsea, always, as always happens with Chelsea Football Club, there's always a spanner in the works. And now we're here with, a fight out, a Royal Rumble. It's the last two men at Royal Rumble vying for the WrestleMania main event. What's going to happen? That's the best way I can describe it.
No, it's a good description. It's a real strange one, that the Ratcliffe coming from left field. And although he said it's sort of 4.2, by the looks of things, when they sort of crunch the numbers, his bid may turn out less than the other bidders when you look at what he's actually physically spending. Because he said the deal is worth 4.25, including 2.5 committed to the charitable trust, the Sport Victims War. So that's very good.
Yeah.
Go to the people of Ukraine,
yeah.
with 1.75 billion committed to invest directly into the club over the next 10 years. Now that sounds fantastic. 1.75 billion over the next 10 years. Yeah. That's 175 million a year. It's, you could spend that on a striker. Half of that.
I was going to say, you spend that on Lukaku, right?
You spend that on Lukaku, and then he's making. To be fair to Ratcliffe, he's saying and doing all the right things. He's saying all the right thing. He's talking about the stadium, going to invest in Stamford Bridge. Keep Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, build a world-class stadium without moving away. Continue to invest in the team, both the men's team and the women's team as well, and invest in the academy. So all things good. Wants Stamford Bridge to reflect the status of London as a city, and be held in the same regard as Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich. All very good stuff, but it does seem rather strange that he's come in after the process is finished. So, how does that work?
Here's my question.
Through a process.
Here's my
so
question.
Rain and Chelsea probably need to sort of very quickly, I imagine, in the next day or so, clarify, is actually Ratcliffe a serious bidder, or is this just a distraction, for some other reason? Because if I was Bowley, who's gone through this process, done the due diligence, they've now got a week to sit down with Chelsea and sort of like progress the bid. The Bowley people must be thinking, what's this all about? And actually, even if I was with the bids that have fallen by the wayside, whether I'm Broughton, whether I'm Pagluka, they were going, hang on a minute, if you're allowing Ratcliffe in, what can we do to stay in the fight, shall we say? So if Ratcliffe is going to put 4.25 billion in, well, maybe if we can raise our offer, by a further X amount of money, do we come back in then? And then the process never ends. This process has got to be completed by the end of May. So Rain and Chelsea clearly need to say very quickly, is Bowley as the preferred bidder, the sole bidder, or is Ratcliffe's bid still in with the shout? And even if Ratcliffe's bid is in with the shout, what we need to hear from Ratcliffe is clearly his thoughts on Chelsea pitch owners, because they're a fundamental part of every conversation that have taken place with all of the bidders, including some that fell by the wayside, and the importance of securing the future of Chelsea pitch owners, and dialogue and thoughts with club supporters, and his views on the Tracy Crouch review of football governance. So that's a wait and see probably conversation that might take place and might not take place, determined by Rain and Chelsea Football Club. They probably need to say, yes, this is a serious bid. It's not a one-horse race, it's a two-horse race.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And it's a good point that you made, because, I mean, what's to stop, the Ricketts then going, okay, well, we've actually sorted out, who's going to do what, in certain, positions and the criteria that they need. They could go back in and say, okay, well, we're back in the race. And then it just literally goes on and on and on. I personally believe, it's just my gut feeling, I personally believe that the Bowley Group will get it done within the next 7 days. It's just it has to really, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Because
it has to. So that's why I just, is this, is this a bit of a red herring? Is this a Trojan horse? The British government, something else going on that they want Ratcliffe because it's a British bid. I
they're the
don't know.
conspiracy theories. Yeah, they're very
Yeah,
worried. Yeah.
you could have a field on conspiracy theories. He said all the right things, Ratcliffe. He's saying and doing the right things. He's willing to put 4.25 supposedly on the table. The rest have gone through a 7-week process. How can you apply the same principles of due diligence to Ratcliffe when today's the 2nd of May and this deal needs to be completed by the end of this month? So there's only
28
20 odd days left.
basically. Yeah.
Exactly. So the clock is ticking. Yeah.
No, 100%. If you were to kind of put your I suppose if you were a gambler man and you were to put your money on it, do you think the Bowley bid will go ahead?
Well, I think with Bowley as preferred bidder, the Bowley group is in a strong position now. So clearly they need to sit down and go into sort of like the level of detail that Chelsea would require to get the deal over the line. So at this present moment in time, Bowley is in pole position, and I can't see, unless a humongous dramatic sort of like change by Rain and Chelsea, that puts Ratcliffe in as a competitor now. It's too late in the day. The deal's got to get done.
Yeah, I think so.
But this is Chelsea, though. We are very unpredictable. So
listen, that's the problem, isn't it? Because I've actually I've done a bit of when I say studying, I've kind of looked up, and I suppose I have done a bit of studying over the weekend. I looked up the history of the LA Dodgers and stuff, and how they've become a force once Bowley. I know he's only a part owner, but a very, very big part owner within that kind of process of making them become kind of the marketable team that they are now, but also winning on the pitch. So I guess that's what. And look, I'm not going to allude to it. You've been privy to many conversations with Bowley and that group, and but I really do believe that Bowley's not just talking nonsense. I really do believe that he has a process. He wants to make Chelsea a very, very big, marketable, franchise would be the right word, because that's what they use over in the States and Canada, a franchise, and I think if we stick with that for like a 5-year process, I really do believe that he will go there, because, you mentioned on the FanCast the other night, I don't know whether it was you that brought it up, but it was a conversation that was had. We've fallen behind a lot of clubs in terms of our franchise name. You know what I mean? In terms of, like, Tottenham are catching up, Arsenal are catching up. City are ahead. Liverpool are now ahead. And like, how did we get here? It was like we just had that one owner. So I suppose where I'm going with this question is, and I suppose to give Chelsea fans a little bit of hope, the non-Roman Abramovich type approach where we can just spend our way out of trouble is probably going to be good for Chelsea. That we have a director of football that trusts Tuchel, and Tuchel trusts, and we actually, it's none of this Marina trying to, penny pinch or any of that kind of nonsense. I mean, Jules Koundé should be a Chelsea player right now. That's, and there's one problem that we don't have this summer, because, we got potentially 3 defenders leaving, and not just defenders, like actual first team starters. So I suppose the question is, do you kind of, with the conversations that you've been privy to, you don't need to give anything away, do you think that that's exactly where Bowley wants to go with this, where we have an actual functioning football club where we get players that suits the manager's necessities, I suppose?
I think there's a very good article in yesterday's Daily Mail about Bowley and the Bowley vision, and I presume the Daily Mail could get it over in Dublin. It does sort of like it does. Or you can pick it up online if you just type in Daily Mail Todd Bowley. Very, very good article about the whole structure behind the Bowley bid, and he is the face of the bid. You're absolutely right. And obviously the experience of the LA Dodgers and how they turned around the LA Dodgers and made them the sort of successful franchise, for want of a better word, they are now. Bowley's here to win. That's my understanding is Bowley, and Bowley is not going to be like Roman Abramovich. And I don't think any of them, to be fair to any of the bidders, and the trust spoke to many of the bidders, including some of the unsuccessful ones, they all said and were doing the right things. But I don't think any of them would be an Abramovich type situation where they'll just write off, over, 1.5 billion worth of debt, that Abramovich is actually doing here. All the ones coming in are coming in and putting a significant amount of investment in, but also, and I'd include Bowley in this, they're not doing it for free.
No.
So they're looking to build something here that they all see doesn't currently exist. And the Sunday Daily Mail article does focus on the whole digital revolution, and that sort of is a potential direction of travel. And they talk about Bowley's plans for that. And if you look at sort of like things like Netflix, do you end up with a football type equivalent of Netflix, Amazon Prime, where clubs like Chelsea are sort of like selling, their TV rights and beyond, and have their own digital channel, and people pay a subscription. That's not the people that go to Stamford Bridge every week, because chances are they probably won't pay £5 to subscribe to something, because you've got the Fifth Stand app. I don't know how well taken that is, but worldwide, people who can't get to Stamford Bridge
will do it.
Will do it, and there's probably a growth opportunity there that they'll get unique stuff sent to them for whatever the fee might be, a weekly or monthly subscription, whether it's personal player interviews, real close insights you don't normally see on the Chelsea sort of like website or TV channels, whatever. And there might be something in that of really getting closer into sort of like the granular detail of the football club, but you pay for it on a subscription, and you probably end up, and I know Ken Bates tried to do it, Bates set up like Chelsea TV originally, and he probably had that vision of like having at some point, Chelsea having their own TV channel where all the games, were streamed through there. So all you've got when Chelsea have their games on their own channel, all you had was like the women's team and the youth team games.
Exactly.
Yeah. But can you sell through Chelsea as a sort of like a franchise, the product of Chelsea Football Club to a worldwide fan base? And I expect Bowley and all the other bidders that haven't succeeded were very optimistic they could do that, and there's money to be made in that.
Yeah, 100%. And I've listened when I mentioned my studying of the Bowley thing. I was actually not studying what he was talking about with Chelsea, but I was studying what he'd actually done with the Dodgers, and obviously he's got a hand in the Lakers as well. And everything he says makes sense. He's very into like the whole metaverse and all this kind of stuff, and he understands that he's a businessman. And like you said, they're not buying it for free. They're paying $4 billion basically because they want to get their return. And their return will be a successful club. And one of the things that really stood out to me was we don't just, he was talking about the Dodgers. He said, what's the point in just hanging on to the name? You know what I mean? What's the point in hanging on to the name? You need to win on the pitch. You know what I mean? You need to win games and be successful for people to want to, I suppose, it's like a magnet, you know what I mean? And you're putting it out there and you're hoping that something sticks. And he was just very, very articulate in his vision of how he sees sports teams and how they need to be successful. So, I mean, look, I think we need that at Chelsea now. I think the Liverpool model kind of shows us that is probably one of the best models. I mean, look, we could say that Man City, I know they spent 100 million on Jack Grealish, but it's kind of the similar to us with Lukaku. It didn't work out, but they generally don't buy 3 and 4 players anymore. It's buying that 1 or 2 players that they need to, fit a certain position. And I think in 2-3 years' time, that's where we need to be. We can spend that 100 million on that one player that we need to fit a certain position.
And I think 2 or 3 years' time is probably the best judge of that.
Yeah,
Because only then will we know. No one will know from day one. Whether it's Bowley, whether it's Ratcliffe, whether someone else comes in at the last minute that no one's thought about, or someone jumps back into it. Whoever ends up, owning and running the club, it'll take 2 or 3 years for people to judge them on there.
yeah.
You're not going to decide. This isn't going to be an Abramovich arriving in 2003 and buying about 15 players straight off the bat. Those days are gone.
Yeah.
So this will be like the example you've given there, Ian. I suspect if Bowley was successful, mirror what he did when he first took over the Dodgers, and then for each season they buy a couple of star players every year, and then that's it. Yeah. That's how it will be. And then I would anticipate, whether it's whoever's successful, they will invest in the academy even more so, and they build through the academy as well, and bring on more of the likes of the Mason Mounts, the Conor Gallaghers, and the Reece Jameses of this world. I think that's how it will be. A couple of marquee signings and growing the academy. That's the way forward.
100%. And I think to give some Chelsea fans out there before we leave, to give them a little bit of hope. Like, the back line isn't, it's not all doom and gloom, even though Rudiger, Christensen are gone. Possibly Alonso, yeah, but we've got Emerson on loan. He could be a decent backup. We've got Chilwell to come back. But don't forget, we've got Levi Colwill, who was absolutely killing it with Huddersfield at the moment. And that is a guy who was absolute shoe-in to come back into that team. We've also got Chalobah, who quite clearly is a project for Thomas Tuchel. And I believe that he's going to go from strength to strength. So we've got players within the squad and also out on loan that can easily come back into the team, and maybe just buy 1 or 2 players here and there that can. And I mean, don't forget, Pulisic is going to be, anybody talking about Pulisic leaving must be absolutely crazy, because if you're getting an American owner in, they're going to make him a franchise type player, right? They're going to want to market the absolute shit out of Christian Pulisic.
He's the poster boy of the US national team. So if we end up with an American owner, I can't see Pulisic going. You're absolutely right. He's part of he's part of the growth, whatever size we are in America. He's part of making it grow it even more. Yeah.
Of course, marketed correctly, without a shadow of a doubt. I suppose when we look at the potential outgoings, I mean, obviously Lukaku, it looks like that there is interested teams. We might hit a loss on it, but I mean, for the new owners, it's not going to be a loss. That's under the previous regime. For the new owners, if they can get 60 million, something like that, and get that wage bill kind of cut down a little bit, it would be phenomenal. And then we've got Armando Broja. I mean, I'd be very, very confident with Armando Broja coming back, and Kai Havertz working on that number 9 position.
I wouldn't rule out we buy a central defender, we buy a striker next year.
Yeah. I think they are going to want a marquee signing, aren't they?
Yeah, that'll be the marquee signings. We'll buy a big name striker and a big name defender.
Yeah, Jules Koundé will be the defender, I think, though. Yeah,
I'd be very surprised if it doesn't happen. Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty much, I think they've all even agreed to certain things like this. We can't say too much, but certain targets have the new owners have agreed that they would, but I suppose the last thing I'll ask you then before we go, and literally don't spend long if because I know you're stuck for time. In terms of Thomas Tuchel, the first thing, if you're a new owner, would you be giving him that 5-year contract and saying, right, you're in charge now. We're going to get a director of football that can work with you, and we're going to build on this. Is that the way you would go?
Agree, 100%. He's the most important thing at the club at this present moment in time. So when you come in, you get the manager on a contract as long as you possibly can, because if he's here for the next 5 years, then buy the right players, build up the academy, bring certain players back on loan. Even if we lose Christensen, Rudiger, and Azpilicueta, there's still a good enough squad, strengthened by 2-3 very good signings, for us to continue to be successful and actually compete with Liverpool and Manchester City next season and seasons to come.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Ian, lovely to meet you. Yeah.
You too, my friend. You too.
If I'm ever over in Dublin, I'll let you know. Yeah.
We're gonna have a point. It's gonna happen. And when I'm over at the bridge next season as well,
let me know. Definitely, let me know if
100%.
you're coming over. Yeah.
We'll have a few points in the pensioner. I like that Chelsea Pilsner.
No, exactly. And again, if you need, I can send you the links for the books as well.
Please do. Yeah, please do, because obviously I want. We're trying to build this channel with for Chelsea fans. Like I said, it's not about monetization. It's about having fun and talking about what we love. There's a lot of 10-minute videos out there that are just absolute nonsense. And purely for monetization. I love having these conversations. I love getting to know, like, your history there was fantastic at the start, talking about how you became a Chelsea fan and the stuff that you've done for the club as well. So without a shadow of a doubt, we're going to link everything that you have for us to link in the description, and I'll obviously share it on Twitter and all that stuff as well. But Mark, absolute pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
My pleasure, Ian. Enjoy the rest of the bank holiday. Take care.
Same to you, my brother. Take care.
Bye now. All the best.
Bye-bye.